Sitting around with nowhere to go. Sitting around with nowhere to go. You're talking to Jane, you're talking to Joe. Talking to Jane, you're talking to Joe. And then my recruiter came to me. Then my recruiter came to me. Say what you want to be. Say what you want to be. I told him mean and lean and green. Told him mean.
I am Staff Sergeant Chamberlain. I am here with Captain Taylor, who has been my instructor through OCS and a co-worker of mine now for like 4 years. And I decided I want to do some interviews with some people that are on their way out of the Guard or out of OCS, which is like almost all of us, so that's going to be fun. And just to capture stories, some don't-dos, some real-life stuff that we saw, some what might prep you for Phase 3, just whatever little thing. So I like to start with your time as you went through OCS as a candidate.
All right, so when I went through OCS as a candidate, I was a 09 Sierra. I was older. I was 27 years old when I decided I finally wanted to fulfill what I considered an obligation to my family and country. I thought about it my entire life. I have a parent and grandparent, great-grandparents that were all in the military. So I was like the last one in our generation to get to do that. And so I was kind of grandpa at basic training, 09 Sierra, no IIT. I went to the 279 and was like just a supply guy that helped out, really had no idea what was going on. And went to OCS. Had heard it was a gentleman's course. And thought it instantly went crazy. Our first 3 drills, they were prepping us for Phase 1, so it was full-on tacking while we were here. And I really had to. I wanted to get through. I still didn't know exactly what an officer did in real life. It just
This sucks.
I met the requirements, so I want to be an officer, of course, but I couldn't tell you exactly what they did out in the real world. I never really saw much of it. So Phase 1 was complete misery. And I would never do it again as a candidate.
Where'd you go?
At Kansas, Salina, Kansas. Actually, I said I'd never go to Salina, Kansas again. And I eventually ended up back there as an instructor. But there was a feeling of like a PTSD type feeling when I showed back up, started recognizing the buildings. It's like, oh God, somebody's going to jump out and scream at me. Of course they didn't, and it doesn't bother me now at all. And then Phase 2, I thought, okay, where did the gentleman's course part? And
That's still good.
I was in leadership, the very first drill of Phase 2, and they really didn't give us much instruction. So I told everybody not even to bring all their gear. It's like, wow, we don't need it. That was all for Phase 1. And so the room inspections didn't go very well. We didn't even have our gear. I think I was lunging around the platoon within the first 30 seconds of that drill. But then as Phase 2 progresses and you learn and you realize what all you have to do and you put in all of that effort, you really start to grow within the program. It becomes easier. You start to find your place. And you really start to see the point. I'm really learning what I need to do, and it's all starting to make sense. And then they start treating you like, hey, you're about to be in charge. And by the time we got to tactics, and I wanted to be infantry, I was the only one in the class that wanted that. Because I was a software engineer on the civilian side, I needed something
Different.
out of the cubicle and out of an office environment.
That's definitely
and I
different.
loved being in the woods and outside. Of course, I found out that, infantry camping is not the same as cool civilian camping, but still, I love it over time. And by the time I got halfway through Phase 2, I had been ranked 1 in the class.
Stud.
But it really had nothing to do. I wasn't trying. I was to do anything spectacular. I was literally just trying to do what I was supposed to do. But I was making that effort. If we were assigned a task, I wanted to get it done and get it done right. And I found out not everybody else does that. They blow it off until drill comes around, and they haven't done anything. And you get to make up for that.
Oh, still today.
Yes.
Still this month, right?
That doesn't change.
It never, no. And it doesn't matter how easy or hard phase 1 or 2 or whatever it is. That does not change.
And you tend to get the same mix. It doesn't matter if they come in, they were prior service E6, or if they're a 09 Sierra. It comes down to the person and if they're willing to try or not. Because none of it's that hard. It's all in manuals. You just may have to do a little extra reading and build that peer process and get some stuff done. And then by the time we got to phase 3, I just loved it.
And you went to Washington as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, I did the normal, like we still do here, Salina, and then phase 2 right over there in that building, in the education center.
Right.
Old billets with no air conditioning that we got stuck in. We had to pass inspections in. It's fun. We never did pass an inspection, by the way.
Nah, you shouldn't. I don't think that you should ever pass it.
Why
isn't this better? Make it better.
Technically, we never made senior candidate status. And we graduated.
Right. Oh, man. A lot of people don't know that those statuses are just there.
Yes.
There's a tool, right? There's another thing. It's like when you buy your kid a toy so that you can take it away when they're bad. It's just another thing.
It makes no difference.
So, how are your first few years? Because I know, a lot of people listening to this are candidates or cadets now. We've got some ROTC folks that listen in as well, or watching videos. So, what is that first transition to being an officer in that first year or two? When did that feel right? When did imposter syndrome go away?
It was craziness because even when you graduate OCS, now you kind of have a feel for what it's going to be like. Then you do that first year with that unit, and it's like, I don't know any of this anymore. It's, we're not doing procedures or weird thing, and you don't have this training schedule that goes by the hour. So you have to learn. You have to put in the effort again. If you're going to be a good lieutenant, it just takes trying. Obviously, you're smart enough to get through the course, so you just have to apply yourself,
right.
Do the right thing, and try.
I felt like transitioning back and forth between we're coming from the line unit to here, it's almost like people are scared to do the right thing because it's the National Guard and no one does the right. It's like that. If I put in effort, I'm going to get laughed at. Versus, I just want this thing to operate smoothly. So people fall into that rut, and then next thing you know, you're just show up at 0800 and we'll see what's going to happen. There's no planning. And now, look at a transportation company in the National Guard, and you show up. You might go do PMCS, you might not. You're going to have an admin day, and then you go home. We've got to a point now where we can't get anything done because it's like that.
And that's
afraid to do the
demotivating.
right thing. Absolutely. My little brother got out of the Guard. He signed up for his 6 and 2, and he was in about a year and a half, and he just quit coming. He went AWOL, and they were like, I was an E6 in 6 years. Cool, we get another one of you. And then, nope. And he literally said, the recruiting video, those guys were riding Sea-Doos, jumping out of helicopters, climbing stuff, rappelling. We come here and I have to fight over a phone charger, right? I got to fight over a plug-in to charge my phone all day. And it is demotivating. It ruins units.
It is. And a lot of that comes from officers not doing what they're supposed to do with plan a good schedule. It doesn't have to be hour to hour. And then make sure all the logistics are set up for that.
Right.
And you get those tools from OCS. And when it comes to the staff ride and the dining in, that's really no different than I'm going to go run a range. You have to know exactly what you're doing, who's going to do what once you get there, troops to task, and then do all your coordination with range control, risk assessments. Otherwise, you're going to show up and it's going to take 4 hours to get that range going, and people are going to be mad, irritated, and you still see that. You still see that today.
Yeah,
It just takes somebody wanting things to go successful. And you can either do the bare minimum and just go run that range and it be hot, or you can be like, hey, let's request an extra 1,000 rounds because we got to stay on the range overnight, and we'll just stay hot and get permission to shoot targets and do team fires and cool stuff that you never get to do on those ranges.
Right. People are they can't think outside the box.
Sure.
The other thing, right, is they get stuck in that little OCS there's a right and wrong way to do things, and you get yelled at if you step outside the box. Sometimes I think that is, it's hard to be innovative because you're always afraid you're going to get in trouble, which has gone away more now in the last couple of years, I think. But
so I went in with the goals of I wanted to commission, even though I really didn't know what that meant, and I wanted to deploy, and that was it. Those were my goals, and that happened. Everything went fast because this was I graduated OCS in 2006, went to IOBC the first half of 2007, and I came back for 1 month before we started MOB for Iraq. I went straight to Iraq, and it was everything I had just learned at IOBC was for infantry. You're going to be infantry lieutenant, and we pulled an MP mission, and now we have vehicles, and we didn't. So it was another cycle in the. You thought you were trained on exactly what you're going to do.
I've got this.
And now you have to start over and you relearn. And we put in the effort, and it went great. And then we were on a 2-year cycle. So did Afghanistan 2 years after Iraq. And when I came back from that, it was I couldn't decide if I wanted to stay. I'd already met all my goals, my personal. I was just approaching that 10-year mark, was just at it. Where you go to, well, if I'm going to retire and give that 20-year money up, then I need to do it now.
Right.
And so they said, well, just take this S4 position. It's pretty easy, and then you can decide. It's like, we really need you in command. Just go take this command, and then you can decide. So
closer to 20.
After almost 3 years in command, I consider it 3 because it was 3 ATs. There wasn't as much drill time, but it's the ATs that, really count in there. I thought it went really well, but I was just kind of done with it. And by then I was so ingrained in the 279 that the only bigger pictures were 179 and brigade. And no other options existed out there. And I went to the commander and said, fair warning, I've looked at everything I'm supposed to, and I've looked at retirement and all of that, and I've decided to get out. And it's like, I'll give you a good 6 more months, and then I'll give you plenty of time to find a replacement. And then I was expecting, to either get yelled at or talked into something, or he was just real calm and said, he thought about something like OCS, or I said, no, I forgot it even existed. I hadn't. That would be kind of cool. I was now teaching on the civilian side and loved it and thought that's a teaching environment. So I showed up to OCS. I absolutely love teaching candidates. I had no idea how much experience I truly had to offer from my quick deployments and getting that experience in the real world.
Right.
Because it's not that available anymore. We're getting out and retiring, and it's good to have for the candidates.
So what were your first few months back like in the OCS schoolhouse? Was it weird? Did you kind of get that Salina, Kansas as a
No, not
thing,
here.
or?
Not here I didn't, because here had changed enough. Like the building had changed, all these new rooms, and so there was just enough look difference. We weren't over in that building at all. We had offices up here, so that was all new. And of course, I'm on the side of trying to figure out all the behind-the-scenes stuff.
Right.
So I'm learning all this stuff. I'm like, hey, I'm surprised this stuff hasn't changed since I was in. Right. Some of the POI was literally the exact classes we were given in class 5-1.
Wow.
So that was a little bit crazy.
You came back was 6-2 or 3 your first? It was in that area, right?
I was here for the end of 6-1.
Okay.
And 6-2 is my first. I'm actually starting with this class. Went to phase 1 with them and got the full experience.
I knew that when we came around in 6-4 that you had been here a while, but your legend was already like you had been here 10 years. And then, of course, now it's we're 4 or 5 years later, and you're still here, and I'm like, holy cow, this guy did a whole career at OCS. But, yeah, I mean,
and that's not normal.
Your experience showed. I mean, and I guess you were only 2 years in, so that's pretty awesome because you had it handled.
Well, and the reason I'm still here is because I was in that mindset of I really met all my goals that I had, and I'm just kind of in that. And I never really looked at that career. I never had any aspirations to staff and battalion commander and
right.
Going through that. I really loved that company level and below. And I wasn't going to be able to have that anymore because you can't. It's just not the way the Army works. What you're supposed to do is, follow your career path. Because if everybody was like me, the Army would just screech to a halt because you're not promoting people
right.
like you're supposed to.
Right, and there's they try to push you to promote too, right?
Sure.
They're constantly trying to send you to.
They have to because they got to have people coming in and they got to. Sure.
Yeah. So that first year going back to Salina, you said it was a place you swore you'd never go. So can you talk to me about that first phase one?
I was finally I did that first half of 6-1. So I had some experience in the classroom here and knew a little bit about some of the behind the scenes, the paperwork that has to be done, and the risk assessments and things like that with the classroom. So I wasn't intimidated at all by going up there and teaching Canada. I was excited to do it. But that feel of, I didn't realize how much I hated phase one. Just looking at the buildings, the grounds looked exactly the same. We were using the same buildings, the same barracks.
Yeah.
And it was that's somebody's going to start yelling at me. And they're going to ask me to do stuff I've never even heard of, much less know how to do. And I'm going to get in trouble for it.
And that's been what, 10, 12 years by that point? It had been because you said you were 5-1
yes.
and you came back 6-1, so that's 10 years, right? So you're looking at almost 11 years of been away, and it's exactly. And I bet it's the same now. Like you're talking about going this year to phase one, and it's the same grounds, the same schedule. Even it feels like. I mean, everything. Which is great that it works, right? And we can just keep. We're not recreating crap every year. It kind of works, but.
Yeah, and it took me a long time to see the benefits of phase one. For quite a while, I was like, "This is just pointless. They're just being mean to me and picking on me." And it took me really into my first deployment to go, "Oh, it's getting you to perform under stress, and when you are wrong. So you're never going to do everything perfect,
right?
And phase one is a big test for that. Are you going to be able to continue under really high stress when your emotions are up and things really are exploding and people really are dying? Are you going to freeze or are you going to move on?"
Of course, when I went through Canada, like everyone else, I just considered it hazing. I was like, I'm being hazed right now. And there was that we had an instance that was kind of a terrible situation that to this day, I'm pretty sure we were hazed. But it was like, just one of those things, man, and you just push through it because you're already in the mindset, right? Like, it didn't matter. But now looking back, and especially since things have started to change, we were talking earlier, it's just kind of, it's moving to that gentleman's course. And we're already seeing the effects, and for good or for worse, right? We've seen some good come out of it, and now we've seen, like, maybe candidates aren't as physically prepared for phase two, and what is phase 3 going to do to that? We've not seen that all play out just yet, but at some point it will come full circle. And we hope that we're making better officers with the way things are going. But when I came back to because I finished OCS and literally just jumped right back in this, or came to this office. I was OCPC for a year or whatever, but I got my qualifications. But I could see it pretty quickly. Like, it does have a purpose. And when I went through, I'd already deployed 3 times. I was a staff sergeant, had ran many, many missions and all that stuff. But there's some chaos going on. I still didn't like it when I was the guy on that end. But now looking back, I'm like, they really do need that. And you kind of get everybody on that same level too. Because my thoughts then were, I am a E6. I have deployed 3 times. This is stupid, right? Why? I'm getting nothing out of this. But even if I didn't, it put everybody on the same playing field. We were all just Joe.
Yeah.
get rid of your ego, get rid of your rank. None of that crap matters anymore. You're just Joe. And you have to operate as a team with a guy that doesn't know what's going on, with a guy that's crying himself to sleep or, spazzing out in the bathroom because, oh my God, they're going to yell at me again. Looking back, I think it definitely had a purpose. Did not feel that way when I was going through it, though.
Sure.
So I would like to hear a funny, a bad, a good story, something about OCS, whether it's from your time in candidacy or since you've been an instructor or a grader at Phase 3. We didn't hit on Phase 3 too hard, but I would like to hear one of those stories, or multiple if you have them.
That was tough because there's a lot of experiences out there. So that's one of those where like asking you your favorite movie.
Right.
Well, I'll pick one, but it may change 30 seconds from now.
We're not limited by time. So if you got more than one, that's okay too.
Phase 1 tends to have the most like embarrassing stories. That's probably easier because as a candidate, as an instructor, I'm less into that. I'm more the kind of get stuff done, and I'm less of a fun guy. That's usually the TACs are the really fun ones,
right?
Especially by the end of the cycle, right? They're just your type A personalities that are on. And I'm more of a let's get through these lanes and get stuff done, and it's just kind of where I'm at. And most of my good stories in there are just about how awesome some candidates did and how to get there. Not as entertaining. So back to 09 Sierra, Salina, Kansas, Phase 1, where I'm trying to learn. You got this little manual that you're trying to go through that tells you dining hall procedures and all this stuff you never even heard of. They don't exist anywhere else. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, for sure.
The first 4 and things that you never see or hear. And it makes basic training look like a cakewalk because there you just do whatever the drill sergeant says.
Stand in line all the time.
Right, and you're good. You just do what they say. Yeah. At OCS, it's not that way. So you thank God that when they do that initial tack attack or the shark attack, that your name wasn't called for initial leadership.
Right.
And then you start learning, see what other people are doing right and wrong and kind of how it goes. So when my turn came around, we were transitioning into the field, which again, I'd never been into the field except for...
What is the field?
I wasn't allowed at the 279 because I hadn't been through AIT. The day before, the next day we transitioned into the field for land nav. We do a leadership rotation, and I'm the first sergeant. I couldn't tell you the first thing I'd ever seen a first sergeant do. In my year and a half in the Guard, I just avoided the first sergeant. I definitely had no idea what they do.
And at Oklahoma, we're so small, you didn't see that, right? That's not a role you play here.
Right.
Ever. You don't get that experience on the candidate leadership side either.
Right. And the commander they gave me had no idea. He was already at the point where he had to walk around wearing a Burger King crown and announce, "I'm the king," because he was incompetent. So there was nothing there. So I'm trying to focus on, I've got DNC for the company. I barely know DNC for platoon. I just do whatever the guy in front of me is doing. So I'm really focused on that. I got to set up the entire field with no information. I've got no idea how to set up shelter halves or what order to set them in or start. So it went south fast. Due to me, the entire company was low crawling out there until I could figure out what to do. So now they're all mad at you.
Oh my God. This is every story in OCS, by the way.
Yes, yeah.
That's how they all go.
To the point where I just and you get to that, it wasn't that I really froze. It was just that I'm done. I've literally got nothing else. No matter what I do, you're going to yell at me. So if you're going to make everybody low crawl, get on it. And then they finally read that and then did the whole backing off. They got all of them started on something. And one of them put me in leaning rest and pretended like he was yelling at me and was like, hey, you need to go over there, make sure you're 100 yards away from Porta-Johns and start laying out. Your platoon's going to start right here, and then stepping them off. And all of that really kind of started making sense. It's what I expected from the get-go, not knowing that they're there to see you squirm and see what you do. So a lot of deep breaths, and by the end of my first sergeant period, it was already going well. I felt like, I always feel like everybody should learn from their mistakes. I make plenty of them. But doing your own Monday morning quarterback also makes you a very good officer.
Right.
You're never going to do anything perfect. But don't keep making the same mistakes, and try to grow, learn, and figure things out. So it went, I even said my little evaluation, it was horrible up front, but improved the whole time. So I've just kind of kept that mindset my entire career, is you're going to get thrown into something you don't exactly know how to do, and you're just going to have to figure it out.
So I have a pretty funny story. It's from phase 1 as well, but it's really an embarrassing story on me. And I'm like you, ended up being first sergeant, and we got thrashed for stuff I didn't even do. Like, you know how it is. I think that's where I really started learning the concept of extreme ownership. Before Jocko wrote the book, and I read the book, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to live my life by this. Because it was that there's a private in 3rd platoon that's asleep by a tree. I know that you're in 1st platoon, but I guess that actually been 1st. I was in 3rd, but why is that private asleep, first sergeant? And I'm like, I'm doing training for the day. I don't know, right? Like, why don't you push until you can give me an answer about why that private's asleep? I'm like, oh my God. Now low crawl over there and tell that platoon sergeant, right? Like, it's just, oh my God. Right. But look, I'd gotten set up for that early because I was a E5, a brand new E5, and I went on we went to South Dakota on Golden Coyote in my transportation company. So we were going to go over there for AT. And I don't really know why people were missing. We just had some key pieces weren't in leadership. And so an E7 had made the first sergeant for the AT. And the very first thing he did was, hey, new E5, you're the first sergeant for AT. Congratulations. And he did the same shit to me back then. He came and woke me up at like 4:30 in the morning. He's like, hey, first sergeant, how come so-and-so's not on their trucks getting ready? And I'm like, do I look like their PL? I don't know. Go talk to them. Like, no, you're the first sergeant. You got to answer these questions. So that I had already been going through that before in my career. Anyway, my story is I had left, we had our child on May 21st, and like June 3rd or 5th or something, we're leaving. So my son is a couple, 3 weeks old, whatever it was. And first kid, I'm 30, my wife's about my age. We both, kind of waited later in life to start having kids. But I went in there like 3 tours. Ain't nothing messed with me. I've had ass chewings. I've been smoked. Like, you're not gonna break me. I may physically break. Like, I'm at that point in my life. I have injuries. I'm very breakable. But mental, I'm not gonna quit. They're not gonna make me cry. And they put us in a classroom, and part of the class was to watch the movie, not the movie, but the scene from We Were Soldiers, where the soldier has a baby. And he's got the name on the bracelet, and he's like, oh, sorry, sir. And he's like, nope, leave that on, right? And he tells about and then, of course, that soldier, goes on and dies, and he gets the... But when I saw the stinking name on the bracelet, I just started boohooing. And I was like, what is wrong with me? And I'm exhausted. You're getting 5 hours of sleep max a night, and that's if you didn't draw fire guard that night or something. You're just stressed to the max. And so my body's just leaking water from my eyes, and I don't know. And I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me. So they think I'm breaking down about OCS. They're like, do you need to see a chaplain? Yes. So luckily we went on a attack break, actually. We go out to do our 10 minutes of fun. And so they walked me out last, and they walked me in the chaplain's office. And she's like, you're going to make it. OCS ain't that big a deal. I'm like, I know. It's not even hard. This is easy. She's like, why are you crying? I missed my son. And she was like, and so, that's all it was. I just missed my kid. So she pulled out her phone. She said, what's your wife's number? I called. I talked to my wife for 5 minutes. She's like, we're fine. You're fine. I'm like, I know. And then I just it just went away. Like, I just turned it off. I was like, all right, love you, babe. And hang up, and like, I'm out of there. And that story, you reminded me because you said that TAC had just put you in front line arrest and then came over and just spoke to you like a human being. And I walked out, and this lieutenant who was very feisty, she tore a lot of people up. She came over, and I just had to take a knee. I had to go friendly arrest, and she was like, are you okay? And she had that, I'm a human. I'm not a black hat wearing maniac robot. Like, I have feelings, and she just checked on me. But oh, that was so embarrassing for no reason to cry. And then it was like it was gone. And then everyone poked fun at me for a few days, and I'm like, yep, I cried. But so that was always pretty funny. But well, we have a dining in to get ready for. So last question, and then we'll cut this off. And so, what is like the top piece of advice you have for a candidate? Either one about to go to phase 1 or one about to go to phase 3, or one of each, actually. If I get one for phase 1 and one for phase 3.
So specifically, I would say for phase 1, you've got to prepare all you can for all the textbook stuff, because you'll be so tired and so exhausted. You're always going to be set for failure when it comes to like your leadership and staying with the barracks. You can try to prepare for that stuff if you want to, but they're going to make you fail.
Right.
But if you fail the written tests, you're out. Doesn't matter if you can hang on or work through it or not. You're out.
Right.
So paying real close attention to all the land nav, anything that you actually have to pass that they offer you in OCPC, or look at some of the manuals yourself. Google some of it. We're at the age where everything's on the internet, or ask in OCPC what some of it means. So
Yeah,
there's no point in getting real prepared for all the crazy stuff, but you can learn as much as you can get a hold of. It's
like I think about phase 1. You have to be the ultimate soldier to go in. You're not going to get a go. Like leadership exam, your leadership, your lat packets. You're not going to get a go, and it's not rigged. But there's too many bodies, too many moving parts, such that you can't make them all operate. Even if you go in, you could probably be a Ranger tab and have had 10 years experience. You're still not going to make that operate. Right. But yeah, absolutely. I agree with the land nav and the rucking. A lot of people just learn how to wear a ruck the correct way, right? There's people that show up that it's this big bloated thing that's bouncing around, and they could just and they fail, right? They just fail miserably. And then that physical piece. What about phase 3?
For phase 3, it's all about learning. Well, it's like getting a paper in college. You got to figure out how you're going to be graded and how that's going to look. So for phase 3, phase 3 can be a whole lot of fun, and you can get very in-depth tactically, but none of that matters if you don't say the mission twice or meet those small grading standards. You could run a mission that rescues the President of the United States from terrorists that actually works, and it won't matter if you missed 2 majors and didn't do a terrain model. So the thing is, first, get all the canned doctrine down of how the book says to do all of this, and make sure it's all done in the time allotted. And once you're good at that, now you can incorporate tactics. And I'd say once at phase 3, just focus on doing the best you can on your 2-hour lane and all the requirements in that before you get creative and want to do fun stuff. Because that can be very motivating, but it only matters if you're still there during the second week.
Yep. It seems to be the lack of confidence is generally the killer, I think.
Yes.
Because competence, of course, builds confidence, but there's people that just go and they are not ready to talk in front of humans while they're being examined, or graded. They're just not ready for it. And I don't know if that's a state mishap or if it's a single soldier didn't focus on. I don't know.
I've seen it from both.
That ability to just be able to run down, 5 paragraphs of an op order and just some of the stinking sub paragraphs.
Yeah.
Right. And if you can knock those out, you're probably going to be okay. And yeah, so confidence is key.
Right.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for your time. We're going to go get dressed and go do whatever we do at dining ins. So,
awesome. Thank you.